Hi, I'm Jason Gorber from ThatShelf.com, and foolishly, Disney has lent me a sword. I'm not sure what they were thinking here, but it is a very nice sword. I mean, it's fun to actually swing around. It's not quite as sharp as we want it to be, but obviously this sword is here to celebrate the release of Mulan, the live-action Mulan. This is certainly much better than any animated sword. This one I actually get to sort of hold and I guess swing around and try not to destroy. It's actually quite lovely. It's nice. It's balanced. It's sort of indicative of how the film is. It's nice. It's balanced. I actually really appreciated what they did with the film to take the animated movie and make it something, frankly, a little bit better. The animated movie is fine. I know a lot of people who grew up with it when they're kids, like inevitably, you sort of fall in love with the silly zaniness of it all. It takes a very straightforward storyline, a very traditional storyline, used in everything from Yentl all the way down, of a woman who infiltrates a man's world. And she has to decide between living a life of the lie in this man's world, where she can eventually sort of uncover the fact that her female identity is actually one of her strengths, not something to be shunned, and the people around her learn their lesson and she gets accepted. Spoiler. Nonetheless, what they did with this film is actually quite interesting. Is they took that storyline, and unlike most Disney films of late, the animated to live action, it is not a straightforward, straight-up remake. In fact, this film owes a lot more to something like another sword, as I hold the blade, another sword film, something like Star Wars, where you basically have a full-on Joseph Campbellian hero's journey. You have this character who obviously has unique heroic prowess, but has some sort of thing holding them back there in the middle of nowhere and don't know whether or not their abilities can be tested. They find somebody who brings them along, and as they grow into their powers and their prowess, they actually manage to overcome the obstructions that are in their way. It feels very much, in the best way, like the same sort of raw mythical elements that Star Wars actually drew from. And because of that, I think it's actually quite interesting. Mulan is directed by New Zealand native Niki Caro, who actually, here in Toronto, won People's Choice Award for her Whale Rider, which was another film that took, in this case, a Maori legend and actually brought it to the big screen. She's playing within not only the ethos of sort of a Disney legend, but also the sort of traditional storytelling of the Mulan character, which actually has existed over millennia. It's a very, very visually impressive film. The battle sequences are quite well done. There's all kinds of interesting sweeping camera movements as things go up and down, and obviously the sword fights are actually quite extraordinary. There's some incredible people that show up, some superstars from mainland and Hong Kong cinema, people like Gong Li, Jet Li, and of course Donnie Yen, who just shows up, and how he can use a sword is quite extraordinary. And as it sort of plays out, you sort of have this sort of, yes, Disney-fied, but nonetheless reasonably authentic look at the kind of historic epics that Chinese cinema has been making for decades, frankly. Because of that, it all sort of ties together, where you get this little sense of Hollywood, this little sense of sort of mainland Chinese spectacle, all coming together in a story which is justifiably straightforward. It is, after all, a hero's journey, but nonetheless one that I think is effective. Again, swordplay, a lot of fun. I must admit that I would love a film like this with a bunch of lightsabers, but nonetheless, the stunt work is very effective, and the visual style, the way that the director actually tilts the camera, we are actually sort of engaged in the movement as she uses her chi in quite extraordinary and magical ways, is a lot of fun. Now, a lot of people are going to think, what's the point? Why bother making a film like this? Frankly, this is much more of a standalone film than something like a Lion King was, and Lion King went on to make billions of dollars. This would have been amazing to see on a big screen, but of course at this time, it's a challenge to do that. Now, the big question is this worth you sort of spending X amount of dollars now to see it a little bit early when you can spend less money and see it in December when it hits Disney Plus? Well, that's entirely up to you. Frankly, it's a little bit less expensive to see with a family at home than it is in a big screen. That's not to say I wouldn't cherish to see this film on a big screen, and when time allows, I really hope that Disney will actually take the time and give this the big screen and potentially IMAX release that I think it deserves. So the film, I think, is good, not amazing. I was very impressed about how they actually took it on, took the storyline, and made its own. Yes, it feels very much that it's sort of scripted by committee, but it's a Disney film. Of course, at some point in time, that's going to be done for the sake of sort of franchise-ness more than sort of a standalone film. It's not quite auteurist the way we would want something like, let's say, Whale Rider, but nonetheless is very, very effective how it actually plays out. And if you actually sit back and enjoy the sort of spectacle of it all, especially if you have a large enough television or projection set to actually enjoy, it's definitely one to seek out. For ThatShelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. I guess I have to give back the sword, which is a little bit disappointing. Nonetheless, I definitely think that MULAN is worth your time. Whether it's worth your money is entirely up to you, but I definitely think that it's something worth seeking out and seeing not only now, but for many years to come. I think that it'll actually introduce people in the best way to the best of both Hong Kong and mainland martial arts cinema, but also historical drama, and then they can actually use this as a stepping stone to an entire new world of cinematic landscape. Thanks very much. Please subscribe. Please follow us on all our social media, and we'll see you next time. All the best.